We're back in the shop. Today's project is going to be to replace the front and the rear brakes on our 07 Avalanche. Truck's got just a little bit north of 270,000 miles. Getting pretty rusty. Motor's getting a little loud. Don't know exactly how long this is going to last yet. So bit of a budget brake job today, but we're still going to get it done. Still has to be done before winter. This is our primary transportation in the winter. We do have a newer Silverado we drive mostly in the summer, but we try to keep the salt off of it. You know, the Rust Belt winters aren't too kind on our vehicles, so that's the whole reason I kept this, because it's not really worth much, and we'll just let the rust build up on this thing. Anyways, we'll get to it. Here's the pads and rotors we chose. I bought these Durago rotors online. They're the premium coated rotors for rust protection. We always need that up here in the north Rust Belt. The pads are just your standard Duralast Gold from AutoZone. I bought the Duralast pads for this not long after I got it, and they're guaranteed for life. Didn't really believe it, but I brought them back 3 or 4 times now, and they just keep handing me new ones, so these are a free set. The rotors, on the other hand, at AutoZone were probably twice the money of what we paid for these online. And you know what? They all come out of China. They're all the same crap, so it probably doesn't make much difference. Pads and rotors are both made in China here. Well, we'll get started. Well, we'll start by buzzing the wheel off here. Hey guys, if you find this video helpful, consider subscribing to my channel, and we'll give the video a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. There's a T30 bolt holding the rotor onto the hub assembly. What I usually do is I just stick a screwdriver through the vane of the rotor to hold it in place and throw my wrench on there, which I just did, and snapped it off. I had 2 of them, tried another one, snapped it off. So looks like that's pretty tight. I can get the broken bit out, luckily. So what we're going to do is we'll just drill it out. You know, in the Rust Belt, things like that happen. It's not really necessary to have that on there anyways. All it does is just hold the rotor on. Once you bolt your wheels on and everything, it does the same thing, obviously. So it's not necessary. I think it's just more for ease going down the assembly line than anything. So we won't be putting one in there. Well, we'll get the rest of it apart and see whether we went deep enough with the drill bit. The caliper bolts are 19 mil. And this one's spinning, so you need to put a wrench on the top. There is a little area there for your wrench. When you do that, just make sure you don't pinch that boot and rip it. There we go, that's all it took. Do the same on the bottom. Got that out easily. I'll stick our screwdriver in there. Pry it back a little. And it should pop right off. There we go. Set it up out of the way, or it's not hanging on the hose. Now these pads aren't horrible, but the rotors are a little rusty on the inside, that's for sure. Now the bolts that hold the caliper mount to the steering knuckle, those are 18 mil. Oh, knocked the camera. I always do that a couple times. The hose on the air gun. Now we'll let that charge up for a sec. Yeah, right. Pressure's fully charged. That should zip this off now. There we go. Then the caliper bracket just pulls right off, and we'll get this all cleaned up. Yeah, it looks like we have to go a little deeper with the drill to get that rotor off. Probably need to be using a bigger drill bit here. Maybe that would help. Yeah, I'll give this one a try. Yep, that's all it took. There we go. And usually we don't get this lucky with these rotors sliding off like this either. Usually we're hammering them off being up here in the rust belt, but this is a little bit of a surprise. Even the hub face here is not that rusty. The last brake job I did hose it down with fluid film before we put it together. Apparently that works. Now let's have a look at the rotor here. This is the outer face. It looks pretty decent. But on the inside, it's full of rust. Rings around it. The pad wasn't having a whole lot of contact surface on this side. The Silverado was the same way, basically. The one side, the outside was decent, and the inside was all rusted up like this. Not sure why the one side rusts more than the other. Now let's see if we can get this out now. Sure hope so. Oh yeah, it's going to come out. I'm really surprised at how little rust is on this hub face. Usually we're taking wire brushes to them and spend a lot of time cleaning them up, but not that I mind not doing it. But we will clean it up a little bit. Amazed how clean that is. Looks like, now that I've wiped it off a little bit, that I put anti-seize on these. That's what it looks like I used. As you can see, a little bit of still on the glove. I was thinking I used fluid film, but it must have been anti-seize. And it worked. I mean, there's no rust on here at all. I'm really surprised. So you do want to clean up your hub faces really well. If there is rust, you got to get rid of it. You got to get it sanded off or use your wire brush. If the rotor doesn't sit flat on here, you're going to get a vibration in the pedal every time you put your foot in the brake. It's going to drive you crazy. So there, we got that deep clean, and we'll just hose it down with our fluid film, even the outside edge here. And basically the rotor just sits on this outside lip and the inner lip here. The middle area here is recessed just slightly. Alright, we're happy with that. Now we'll take the bracket over to the workbench, get that all cleaned up. So we've got the bracket mounted in the vise. We'll pull off the hardware here. We're going to clean up all the rust underneath it, because what it does is it jacks up this hardware and makes the pads tight. The pads can't go back and forth and float freely, then they're going to wear out prematurely. I just take a wire wheel to it first and then maybe a file if it needs it. Usually does. Be careful not to catch your rubber boot with a wire wheel, obviously. Yeah, she's going to need some filing. Let's see if we can't get a little closer here. You can see the rust for sure. And what we want to do is get rid of as much of it as we can, because like I said, it will lift up the hardware kit. So I just take a file. There is actually files for this. I don't have one, but you can see the rust coming off. So definitely spend a few minutes doing this. Get it clean, get it flat, get rid of all the old corrosion. We will test fit the pads as well, make sure that they move back and forth, that's for sure. Okay, that one looked pretty decent. And spin it around to the other side. Now I'll bring you back in a minute when these are all done. So we got the surfaces there as clean as we think we need it. The next thing we'll do is check these pins, make sure they're well lubed. Oh yeah, there's plenty on there still. Pull the top one. Top one's got a little crud on the edge. We'll get that wiped off and a little bit of fresh grease on there. I'll bring that over to the wire wheel. And so we got the upper pin all cleaned up. We'll just reapply some new fresh grease to it. And that should be good. Slides in and out nice, that's what we want. And we're happy with that. Now the bottom here, we'll apply some grease underneath where the hardware clips go. Now the whole reason for the grease is just to keep the rust away. But we're using synthetic brake grease. Here, I'll show you. I think this just came from AutoZone, but that's what we use. And if you don't do this and you're in the rust belt, the pads will just tighten right up in these caliper brackets and they'll wear out prematurely for sure. You can get your clips back in, new clips or hardware kit. Alright, we'll flip it over to the other side. Now you don't want big wads of grease hanging off the inside here or you'll get it all over the rotor. So just spread it on nice and that's all you need. Press those down firmly. Now we'll check the pads, see how they fit. Should be two different kinds of pads on these. Should be slightly different. Yeah, this one's cut out here, so that's for this side. And you see they do move back and forth. That's exactly what we want without too much effort. Now the pad for the other side's also got the squeaker built in. If that hits your rotor, you'll hear it when the pads wear out. And same with these slide back and forth nice. These have some kind of tape on the back of them, the pads do. We'll pull that off. It says to remove it. Alright, we're getting there. I did leave a fingerprint on this pad, so we'll pull that off and get a little brake clean on it yet. So the next thing I'm going to do is take the bolts, both sets, over to the wire wheel, get all the old Loctite off of them, and get some new Loctite on them. I guess the next thing to do would be get our rotor on. And these look pretty decent. Painted hub face. Just throw a lug nut on one of the studs just to hold it in place for us. Since we don't have that Torx head bolt holding it on anymore. And we'll take some brake clean, hose it down good. There's usually a little oil on these from the factory to keep them from rusting up before you get them. We'll hose down the backside too, obviously. That should be good. And next we'll mount the caliper bracket back on. Now the torque spec I found for these online was 139 foot-pounds. I'm not sure that's right. I looked 2 or 3 different places and got 2 or 3 different answers. So best bet's to look that up for yourself, because I'm not confident in what I found. Hate to give out torque specs that aren't right, but that's still pretty tight though. So we'll put the torque wrench on and give it a click. And of course the compressor kicks back on. Alright, next we'll slide the pads back in. Try not to get any grease on them this time. There we go. So next we got to push the pistons in. And one thing we have already done is we did look under the hood to make sure there was room in the reservoir, that we wouldn't overfill it by pushing these back in. Make sure they go in smooth. If they don't, there's probably something wrong. Might need to replace the caliper. There is a special tool for this. I don't have one. C-clamp works though. And yeah, they're going in nice and smooth. Surprising with these being original calipers. A lot of miles. That should do. Sometimes you'll get a little air trapped in the rubber boots here, and you have to just kind of burp them out a little bit, but looks like we're good here. Next I'll scrape all the gunk off the face of the pistons here. That's also old grease we've used on there over the years. Get them cleaned up a little bit. Apply some fresh grease. We'll take a wire brush to the ears here as well, get them cleaned up a little bit. Help keep the brakes a little quieter. And I can't see with the camera in the way, so I'm going to have to move you out of the way for a sec. Okay, so I'm just lightly going over the pistons as well with the wire brush. I got it about as clean as we can get it. What I'll do next is take a little bit of that same brake grease that we were using earlier. Put a little bit on the pistons where they connect with the pad. Don't have to get too crazy, just a nice light coat. Again, it just helps keeps things quiet. Keeps it from rusting too much. And then on the back of these ears here too, where they connect with the outer pad. Some guys put the grease right on the back of the pads. Some do it on the caliper like I'm doing. Doesn't really matter, either way's fine. we should be good. Well, looks like we're ready to bolt the caliper back on. Make sure I don't have the hose twisted. Push our pins in a little. Grab our bolts that we put a little Loctite on. I think those are 19 mil. And the torque spec for these I found online was 74 foot-pounds. But again, I'm not real comfortable with that. I should have spent a little more time checking a couple other sites, but so there we go, we got set at 74. Camera's probably going to be in the way. Oh, maybe not. All right. There we go. See if I can do the bottom here without knocking the camera. Good. One last hose down to brake clean before we put the wheel back on. There we go. So this went pretty easy today. There was no real surprises other than not being able to get that Torx head bolt out. But like I said, that's not super necessary anyways. We'll just snug these up, and when we get it on the ground, we'll torque them to spec. Alright, I guess we're ready to lower this thing down. So the torque specs we came up with for the wheels is 140 foot-pounds. But again, like I said, check for yourself. That impact on its lowest setting comes real close to 140. Alright, so all we have left is to put the hubcap back on. If you liked the video, found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel too if you would. Always appreciate that. So we'll cut this video off here. The next one will be the rear brakes on this. We'll do a separate video for that. You can keep an eye out for that. Alright, thanks for watching.